Hello and welcome. You're watching the Daily News Simplified, and I'm Ankit. Now, today being 8th of March, it is important from two occasions. That's why let me wish you, first of all, a very happy Mahashivratri, and especially to our female viewers, a very happy Women's Day. So, let us start our today's DNS with the first mains related article of the day. And naturally, today being the Women's Day, the op-ed section of today's newspaper, they were filled with many articles. And these articles, they primarily dealt with one issue, that how women in India, they are facing issues relating to their workforce participation. Hence, in our today's discussion, we will be dealing with various intricacies and nuances related to female labor force participation in India. Now, this topic, it is important from two papers. First of all, GS paper, it highlights role of women. And naturally, women's participation in workforce will have an increased and empowered role for women in Indian society. And also from GS paper 3 syllabus, which deals with Indian economy and issues relating to employment, this topic is important from GS paper 3 syllabus. And also, you can see from this PYQ of the year 2022, questions relating to employment and how to increase employment in India in general has been a key area of interest for UPSC. So each and every aspirant should pay attention to this discussion because I'll be dealing in detail with relation to issues of female labor force participation. Now, recently, there was this important development that highlighted that India's female labor force participation currently, it stands at 37%. Now, you can see from this graph, India's female labor force participation in past 6 years have increased in a continuous manner. However, still, despite this increase, you can see India is quite below the global average, which is 47.3%. And also, female in India, they naturally earn less than what men usually earn. For example, every 100 rupee that a man earns, a woman generally earns close to 3/4 of that amount, that is 76%. And also, participation of women, especially in relation to vulnerable employment, especially self-employed workforce, is quite high, and it is also more than that of men. Because women, 77.3% of women, they are self-employed in nature, as against only 72.9% of men. Hence, you can understand not just women participate less in the workforce, they earn less, and also they are more employed in vulnerable employments. Now, there was this important work by Claudia Golden, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics for her work related to female labor force participation. And in this regard, Claudia Golden, she highlighted that participation of women in workforce, it depends on the level of economic development of a society. For example, if the economic development of a society is quite less, naturally those societies would be primarily agricultural based societies. And in this society, female participation, especially as agricultural workforce, is quite high. However, as the economic develops and it moves from low developed economy to middle developed economy, you see a gradual decline in female labor force participation. However, as the economy grows further from middle income to higher income groups, you can see a gradual increase in female labor force participation. And these are primarily due to many reasons. First of all, in developed economies, we see the prevalence of service-based workforce, which see increased participation of women. Also, women have access to contraceptives. The changing expectation of society wants them to get employed, and also women are subjected to increased avenues for education. So this not just makes them more employable, but it also increases their participation in workforce, primarily in the service sector. Hence, you can understand India being a middle income country, this directly signifies that the proportion of women employed in India is generally low than that of Western countries. Correct. So this was the basic trend of India's female labor force participation, and also the trend of why women in India, they are particularly employed in more vulnerable sectors. Now let us understand why the participation of women in India is quite low, and there are many reasons. The first and probably the most important determinant is the social factor, because primarily Indian society witnesses men and women in different manner. Because men primarily, they are seen as breadwinners of the family, and on the other hand females, they are they are perceived as someone who can manage the household in a better manner. And this segregation is what defines the role of men and women in Indian society. Because female, as I've already highlighted, they are perceived as household caregivers. So the conceived notion is that women, when she gets older, she'll be married and move to a different household where she will discharge duties such as childcare as well as care of elder members of the family. And this is the preconceived notion that women in India generally fail to escape. Hence, because women, they are perceived as someone who will be engaged in household activities, this have implication in their educational levels also. Hence, we can see that women participation in higher education currently is somewhat lower than that of men. And also, in terms of skill education as well as vocational training, women are generally behind males. And this determines the level of economic participation of women also. And further, when women is educated less than men, their penetration to technology is also low. Let me highlight how penetration of technology in terms of women is low in India. Because only 40% of women in India, they have access to internet. So because of these factors, that is social segregation, which leads to decreased avenues for education and low technology penetration, it disincentivizes the companies to hire more and more women. So you can see the incentives for any commercial enterprise to hire a woman is lower than that of men. Because first of all, women are not educated properly, and also they have low penetration to technology, which means if any company wants to hire women, they have to spend more on providing them with adequate training. They also have to spend more on providing avenues such as creches for children as well as safe transport facilities. And this increases the cost that an enterprise has to spend if they want to hire women. Therefore, this decreases the incentives for company to hire women. And also women who go to a workplace, they also are subjected to somewhat restrictive conditions. What I mean by restrictive conditions, that women in workplace, they are subjected to sexual harassment, issues relating to safety, lack of transportation, as well as restrictive work timings. Therefore, you can understand that women who go to a workplace, they are subjected to these kinds of restrictions. Also, there are some laws in India which restricts participation of women in especially in hazardous work conditions. For example, Factories Act, it prohibits women from dangerous work. Therefore, all these factors, social factors, economic factors, education factors, all these factors, they combine and they prohibit women from participating in workforces. However, it has been greatly recognized that women should be participated or should be participating in economic activities more and more because it has many benefits. Let us understand this in this particular slide. First of all, if women gets employed, it increases the disposable income of household. which means if a household has more income, they'll spend more on consumption, which will again have a multiplier effect on Indian economy. And also what we have witnessed, that household where both men and women work, they have increased resilience, especially to economic shocks. For example, if a man in a household, he loses job for some reason, but if a female also works, then that means that that household has some kind of a income. This also improves the resilience of household, especially in downturn events such as recession and COVID-19 pandemic. Also, participation of women in workforce, it goes long way in reducing the poverty levels of women in Indian society. Hence, all of these factors, it combines into increased chances of GDP growth, because it has been highlighted, if India were to achieve parity in terms of female labor force participation, India's GDP will increase by 27% in total. Whereas, as far as GDP growth is concerned, it will increase by 1.4%. Hence, you can see increasing participation of women has an economic rationale also. But not just economic rationale, it also has many implications in social sector as concerned. For example, this increased avenues or increased income of women will go a long way in creating women empowerment in general, because women who earn in a household will have a greater say or have a greater power to decide on various important matters. For example, how the children will be educated, how much amount of money will be spent on healthcare of not just women but also that of children, and also she'll have increased avenues in family planning matters. So it is important for women to participate in economic activities, because it will help empowering women, and this will have implication in improving social indicators of the country. For example, if we spend more on child education and healthcare, India will witness lower infant mortality rates as well as lower maternal mortality rates. Hence, you can understand that these important indicators can be reduced only by empowering women. But also, empowering women has economic, social, but also has implications on India's global standing, because India subscribed to sustainable development goals. And sustainable development, one goal, it wants any society to reduce poverty. Hence, especially reducing poverty of women will increase India's standing as far as SDG 1 goals are concerned. Further, India also subscribes to SDG Goal 5, which provides for gender equality, as well as SDG Goal 8, which provides for decent work opportunities. Further, improving all these goals will have implications on SDG Goal 10, which highlights reducing the amount of inequalities. Further, there are also many global rankings in the world which highlight or which ensures the how much amount of female workforce participation is there in the country. So, in all those rankings, India will improve its position if it were to employ more and more women in general. And recognizing this, government has brought forward many initiatives to promote female labor force participation. First of all, few years back, India undertook reforms in its labor code. And first of all, in Code of Social Security, India provided increased leave for women as far as maternity leave is concerned, which was earlier 12 weeks and it was increased to 26 weeks. Further, India also made changes in goals or code of occupational safety, health and working conditions. And in this goal, India allowed women to work in night shifts. Further, India also made changes in its code of wages, where it prohibited the discrimination of women in basis of providing them with wages. So this means you cannot discriminate whether a worker is a man or a woman in providing them with various wages and salaries. Hence, all these codes, when they were amended, it increased the avenues for women to participate in workforce. Because if a woman were to participate, she'll be eligible for greater maternity benefits, can work in night shift, and will also face no discrimination as far as wages are concerned. Also, India incorporated certain safety measures for women at workplaces. And most important development was passage of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act of the year 2013, which made it mandatory on every company to establish a prevention of sexual harassment committee, also known as POSH committees. Because women who are subjected to sexual harassment at work, they can un- they can complain to these committees, and then those committees will investigate the nature of complaints and then will punish the related culprits. Also, India increased the wants to increase the skill development levels of women, and in this regard, the government, it provided women training in industrial institutes. It provides women with vocational training and also extends loans to female entrepreneurs. So all these issues combined, it not just increases the skill level of women, but it also encourages women to establish commercial enterprises themselves, especially through self-help groups. Also, there are many other initiatives, most important being Mission Shakti. Now, this Mission Shakti, it was it is an umbrella scheme which provides for safety of women, which was enacted in the financial year of 2021 and 22. Hence, all these initiatives, it provides or it promotes the participation of women in workforce. Now, let us look at what should be the way forward in order to further increase the labor force participation of women in India. And the most important initiative should be done at the level of policy making, because through policy we can ensure women gets flexible work timings, and also it should made it mandatory for companies to establish childcare facilities. Most importantly, bring creches for infant child. Hence, when women, they'll have opportunities for flexible work as well as childcare facilities inside their workplaces, it will encourage them to participate in economic activities in a more increased manner. Further, government should also provide women with more opportunities. And in this regard, women should provide them with skill training, should support entrepreneurship, because India is currently increasingly seeing women entrepreneurs being successful. For example, there was this recent startup which filed for IPO, that is Nykaa. And also there are important startups such as Mamaearth and Zivame which are led by women. So this highlights that women, if given an adequate opportunity, can be a good economic entrepreneurs. Hence, government should provide opportunities to provide them with skill training and entrepreneurship through extension of loans. And also, government should provide women with social security measures, especially to women who are engaged in informal sectors. Government should undertake sensitization program, because currently, as I've already highlighted, Indian society sees men and women in different manners. And for increased female force participation, this has to go. Hence, government should conduct increased awareness programs as well as highlight the achievement of successful women, because it will not just encourage movement, familiar that they are doing injustice with women in general. Also, government should provide increased safety opportunities to women, and this can be done in multiple manners. For example, state governments in general, they can set up working women hostels, which we have seen are implemented in many states such as Uttar Pradesh. However, this initiative should be implemented in an all India manner. Also, government should provide women with access to safe transport. The most important example being pink taxis and autos, which means taxis and autos which cater exclusively to women and are driven by women drivers themselves. Hence, by increasing or providing women with hostels and also a safe transport for them to commute to work on a daily basis, will go a long way in encouraging female workforce participation. Hence, this was all for today's discussion related to nuances and intricacies of female workforce participation rate. And with this, let us move to the second article of the day, which you can see appeared in all three newspapers, that is the Hindu, Indian Express and Business Line newspaper. Now, this news article, it highlights that India has approved a national level AI mission. Now, this AI mission or India AI mission, it has been given a financial outlay of more than 10,000 crores and it will be implemented for a duration of 5 years. Now, it was brought forward by Ministry of Electronics and IT, and this will be implemented by India AI Independent Business Division, which will work under Digital India Corporation. Now, this topic is in general, it is important from GS paper 3 perspective, because the syllabus of GS paper 3, it highlights awareness in the fields of information technology. Now, this mission, that is India AI mission, it has 6 components. First of all, as you can understand, development of any artificial intelligence, it requires increased computation capacity, which means that computers which provide for artificial intelligence, they are embedded with a what is called a graphics processing unit. Now, in general, your computer, they are embedded with one graphic processing unit. However, AI, it requires computing capacity at much more larger scale. And in this regard, India AI, it provides for infrastructure development through PPP model, where both public and private sector will combine to have more than 10,000 graphic processing unit capacity. Hence, this will help India to increase its infrastructure as well as computation is concerned. Now, the second important model or component of this mission is India AI Innovation Sector. Now, in this innovation center, the innovation center, it will establish multimodal. Hello. Am I audible now? Am I audible now? Hello? I hope I'm audible now. Now, the second component is India AI Innovation Center. Now, this Innovation Center, it provides for large multimodal models. Now, these models, they will be utilized to understand what are the societal problems in Indian society are general. Hence, AI will try to solve these models and will have an increased impact on socio-economic aspects of the Indian society. Also, to train AI, you understand you need a large set of data. So, India AI, it also has a India AI datasets platform, where startups and businesses who look to provide AI, they will be provided with a non-personal data sets which will enable these companies to train their AI models. Further, India AI also has an application development initiative. And in this initiative, we'll witness that especially critical problems of Indian society, they will be solved, which will have implications on socio-economic empowerment of Indian society. Also, this India AI, it looks to provide increased skill training by integrating AI at undergrad, postgrad, and at doctorate levels, which will not just increase the skill levels of workforce, but will also provide AI labs at tier 2 and tier 3 cities in Indian country. Further, this India AI, it will also want to finance Indian startups in general by extending them with funding, especially with related to deep AI startups. Hence, you can understand through this component, India wants to ensure innovation in Indian society, which will bring more and more startups who wants to develop AI tools. Hence, in general, by promoting innovation in Indian society, it will reduce the dependence of India in general on other countries for AI related work. Further, it will create amount of highly skilled workforce which will increase employment avenues in Indian society. Hence, through increased employment, it will help India reap its demographic dividend. Also, India currently it is witnessing a competition with other countries as far as levels of AI development is concerned. Hence, by providing India with necessarily AI support, it will increase India's competitiveness and participation in global AI decision making. Hence, through this AI model, India will create increased opportunities for innovation, employment creation, and increase its competitiveness at a global level. Hence, with this, let us move to the next article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Business Line newspaper. Now, this article highlights the importance or benefits of green ammonia. Now, ammonia, it is an important component which is used to manufacture fertilizers in general. Now, how is ammonia produced? Now, ammonia, as you can see from this chemical reaction, it is produced with the help of hydrogen. And how you produce hydrogen determines the nature of ammonia. If you produce hydrogen using fossil fuels, the ammonia or the resultant ammonia, it is known as gray ammonia. Whereas on the other hand, if you produce this hydrogen through renewable energy, this is known as green ammonia. Hence, you can understand to manufacture green ammonia, you need to manufacture green hydrogen in the first place. And in this regard, the government of India, it recently brought Green India Mission, which currently functions under Ministry of Renewable and New Energy. Or Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Now I've attached a screenshot of various targets of this Green India Mission, and I've also provided in great detail about Green India Mission, Green Hydrogen Mission, and Green Ammonia Policy, which you can refer in the notes after this session ends. Now let us discuss what are the benefits of generating or producing green ammonia. Now, first of all, as you can understand, and as I've already highlighted, that you manufacture ammonia through hydrogen. And if we use fossil fuels to manufacture ammonia, this will increase the emission of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide as well as nitrogen oxides. Hence, by producing green ammonia, we will reduce these greenhouse gases, which will go further in India's commitment as far as nationally determined contributions are concerned. Also, ammonia is used in great manner as far as India's agricultural sector is concerned. So, to reduce the overall green footprint or carbon footprint of India's agricultural sector, we need to produce more and more green ammonia. Hence, it will not just reduce the emission of Indian economy in general, but it will also reduce the emissions of agricultural sector in particular. Also, as you can understand, transporting green hydrogen is a big challenge because first you have to liquefy the hydrogen for it to be transported in a desired manner. But what is important is the liquefaction temperature of green hydrogen. It is more than minus 253 degrees centigrade. Whereas the ammonia is concerned, it could be liquefied for as low as minus 33 degrees centigrade. Hence, you can understand liquefying ammonia, it is comparatively easier than liquefying hydrogen. Hence, to ensure safe handling and reduce cost in transportation, we can transport green hydrogen in form of ammonia to nearby surfaces, and then we can reduce the amount of cost that is associated in transporting hydrogen. Further, as you can understand, India is dependent on import on fossil fuels from various other countries. For example, we import natural gas primarily from Qatar as well as Russia. However, if we are able to generate the or produce hydrogen through use of renewable energy, we will be not dependent on other nation. Hence, it will increase India's energy security in general. Also, India is currently an importer of fossil fuels. However, if India were to generate more and more green hydrogen, then it will increase India's opportunity as a key exporter of green hydrogen. And in this regard, India is currently looking to capture as much as 10% of global market as far as green hydrogen is concerned. Hence, because of potential to reduce emission of India's important sectors, ensuring safe transport and handling of hydrogen, increasing India's energy security, and promoting India's export potential are key reasons for Indian government to go for green ammonia. Now with this, let us move to the next article of the day, which you can understand appeared in the Indian Express in its explained section. Now this article, it highlights that India is looking to manufacture a key active pharmaceutical ingredient, that is Penicillin G, after a long period of time. Now this news article, it is important from GS paper 3 perspective because this topic, it is important from economic point of view because India is looking to produce these APIs in India itself, and it is also important from healthcare sector because these APIs, they are used to manufacture various pharmaceutical products, which goes a long way in improving India's access to antibiotics in general. Further, these are important developments related to science and technology. Hence, these factors, they go a long way in making this topic important from UPSC perspective. Further, you'll ask, what is this active pharmaceutical ingredient? Now, these APIs or active pharmaceutical ingredients, they form a key component in manufacture of drug and other pharmaceutical products. Because these APIs, they're responsible for bringing about desired effect in any pharmaceutical product. And these are generally of two types. They can be either derived of natural substances. For example, this Penicillin G is a naturally derived API. Whereas on the other hand, other APIs, they are synthetic in nature, which means they are generated or derived from chemical components. For examples, API, which are used to manufacture aspirins, paracetamols, they are generated using synthetic production measures. Hence, this Penicillin G is a naturally derived API. Now you can understand India liberalized its economy in early 90s. And before this, India was able to manufacture most of its APIs in domestic market. However, after India liberalized its market, India saw influx of cheap Chinese made APIs. Hence, Indian industry, it failed to compete with this cheaply available Chinese APIs. Hence, as a result, these industries, they shut down in a gradual manner. However, India wants to reduce its import dependence, and also India wants to reduce its current account deficit, which has forced Indian government to increase the productions of API in the domestic market itself. And in this regard, government has made few efforts to increase its API production in the country. The most important development is India brought a production linked incentive scheme, especially for the pharmaceutical sector, back in the year 2021. And in this regard, India wants to increase manufacturing capabilities by incentivizing the companies who establish API manufacturing units. Further, government it also brought an umbrella scheme called Scheme for Development of Pharma Industries. And these have various subcomponents which are used for creation of common facilities, used for technological upgradation, as well as establishing medical devices industry. Hence, by providing industries with common facilities and upgrading their technological levels, the government wants to create or wants to make the domestic API manufacturing industry competitive in its own nature. Further, back in 2017, Indian government it also brought forward what was known as draft pharmaceutical policy. And this policy it went a long way in nurturing the domestic pharmaceutical industry. And further, it also wants to increase the global competitiveness of Indian pharma sector. And in this regard, India's pharmaceutical sector, it was given the designation of being a champion sector. Hence, it will wants to increase the investment and also wants to increase the focus of manufacturing in pharmaceutical sector. Hence, these were the efforts that were undertaken by Indian government in general to promote the production of APIs in the country. Hence, by producing APIs, India will reduce its dependence on import, which will also have implications on reducing its current account deficit. Now, with this, let us move to the next article of the day, which you can see appeared in the front page of the Hindu newspaper. Now, this news article it highlights that Supreme Court earlier it declared the electoral bond scheme as unconstitutional and void. And in this regard, the Supreme Court it asked the State Bank of India to declare the details of political donations. And this was to be done by SBI up till March 6th. However, SBI was unable to disclose the amount of political funding and the various details related to political funding by this particular date, and as a result SBI it wanted extension up till June the 30th. And in this regard, the Chief Justice of India, that is Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud, he has highlighted that Supreme Court it will consider if any plea were to be submitted to it to consider the charges related to contempt proceedings against the State Bank of India. Now, this contempt proceeding it is important with respect to functioning of judiciary, because judiciary it gives various judgments which are then binding on the related political or other stakeholders. And if those stakeholders they were not to follow the Supreme Court judgments, then Supreme Court they can consider what is known as contempt proceedings against them. Now, these contempt proceedings they enable Supreme Court to enforce its judicial decrees on various parties. And it is important with respect to functioning of judiciary. Thereby, this topic is important from GS paper 2 perspective. Additionally, from this PYQ of the year 2022, you can see that provisions of criminal and civil contempt, they were a subject of a question in prelims. Thereby, this topic is very much important from prelims perspective. Now, let us understand what is this contempt of court means. Now, contempt of court, it generally means that if there's any disrespect with relation to Supreme Court or any judicial body, or it creates disruption in normal judicial proceedings, those are liable to be charged as contempt of court. Now, Constitution of India, especially with relation to Article 129, it highlights that Supreme Court is court of record, which means that Supreme Court has a power to punish in case of contempt on itself. Whereas on the other hand, it also gives the judiciary the power to have contempt proceedings on various judicial decrees. However, these particular provisions, they are subjected to laws passed by Parliament. And in this regard, Parliament of India, it passed two important statutes. First of all, which was known as Contempt of Court Act of 1971. And there was this another statute which was known as Rules of Proceedings for Contempt of Supreme Court, which was passed in the year 1975. Now, these two statutes, they regulate how those contempt proceedings should go. And not just this defines the contempt power, but it also limits the exercise of contempt power by the Supreme Court. Hence, it defines and it limits the exercise of power, thereby not making this power an absolute power. Now, this act, that is Contempt of Court Act of 1971, it defines two types of contempt. The first, it is known as a civil contempt, which is generally passed in case someone willfully disobeys the court order. Hence, if someone willfully disobeys the court order, he or she will be subjected to civil contempt proceedings, which can penalize the errant through fines, imprisonment, and other restrictions. However, when somebody, they try to scandalize the court or tries to interfere or obstruct the court proceedings and further holds prejudice against the judiciary, he or she shall be liable for criminal contempt. Hence, you can understand this civil contempt, they want to comply or want to compel compliance as far as court order is concerned. Whereas this criminal contempt, it is utilized to preserve the dignity of the judiciary. Hence, these are two different types of contempt. Now, let us solve the model question. With reference to judiciary, consider the following statements. The first statement, the power of contempt to all courts established by law is available to all courts established by law in India, including the Nyaya Panchayats. Now, the Contempt of Court Act, it provides contempt power to all levels of Indian judiciary. That is Supreme Court at the apex level, High Court at the state level, as well as district courts at district level. However, these Nyaya Panchayats, they are not endowed with power to ensure contempt proceedings. Thereby, this first statement is incorrect. The second statement, the court cannot initiate any proceedings of contempt after the expiry of 1 year from the date of which the comment was alleged to have been committed. Now, this statement is correct, again because Contempt of Court Act of 1971, it limits the power of exercise of contempt by saying that court cannot consider a case for contempt if more than 1 year has passed for that incident. Hence, as you can understand, the answer to this model question is option B. Now, with this, let us move to the next article of the day, which highlights the need to fight tropical disease in the country. Now, there are some kind of diseases which are known as neglected diseases. For example, on one hand, there are diseases like tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, as well as malaria, which have a great focus of respective governments, as they are not known as neglected tropical disease. While on the other hand, there are many diseases which are categorized as neglected tropical diseases. Because first of all, these diseases they are prevalent in poor sections of the society. Hence, these people they do not have increased avenues to buy medicines with relation to these diseases. Hence, it disincentivizes any pharmaceutical company to develop medicines and formulation with regards to these diseases, hence, neglecting these diseases in general. Now, there are as many as 20 neglected tropical diseases, which is categorized as by World Health Organization. Now, also questions relating to various diseases, especially Zika virus, has been a subject of UPSC question in the year of 2017. Hence, you can understand this topic is important from prelims perspective. Now, I've given an indicative list from which you can see that these negated or neglected tropical diseases, they can be either protozoan, virus diseases, or can be of bacterial in nature. Hence, you can understand that these are various kind of diverse diseases. Now, you have to understand that transmission of these diseases, they can take place from various vectors. For example, mosquitoes, flies, as well as sand flies are responsible for transmission of these diseases. Whereas some other diseases like soil transmitted helminths, they can occur through faecal or oral route, which means they can transmit through infected food products. Now, there is this important diseases which is known as visceral leishmaniasis or otherwise known as Kala Azar. Now, this visceral leishmaniasis, it is an important disease as far as India is concerned, because India, it is responsible for as much as 18% of total global burden. And the negative impact of this disease, it can be felt in 54 districts which are spread across 4 states in India. These are Bihar, Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh, as well as West Bengal. So you can understand from this particular example that these negated or neglected tropical diseases, they are much more prevalent in poor areas of any country. Now, has India been able to eliminate any neglected tropical disease? The answer is yes, because India has been able to eliminate guinea worm, trachoma, and yaws in the recent past. Now, with this, let us understand the practice question. Consider the following statements with reference to neglected tropical diseases. The first statement, it states malaria and tuberculosis. They are included in World Health Organization list of entities, which again is an incorrect statement because these are important diseases which are widely recognized, hence they are not neglected in any way. Further, India successfully eliminated visceral leishmaniasis, commonly known as Kala Azar, which you can see from this example is an incorrect statement because India even currently is witnessing as much as 18% of global cases. Hence, the answer to this model question is option D because both of these statements are incorrect. Now, let us understand this last article of the day, which appeared again in the Business Line newspaper. Now, this article, it highlights that center has increased its budgetary outlay for tea development and promotion scheme. Now, this scheme, it has multiple objectives. For example, it wants to increase productivity and quality of Indian teas in order to make Indian tea globally competitive. Further, this scheme, it focuses on development of small tree growers. It wants to increase value addition in Indian teas, explore the potential of tree growing in northeastern states, and by doing this, it wants to increase India's tea export, especially to high value markets. Further, this scheme, it also encourages research and development and other technological innovation. Now, who will implement this scheme? It is the tea board. Now, this tea board, it is headquartered in the city of Kolkata, and it has another office in the city of Moscow, that is in Russia. Now, other important details relating to this scheme as well as tea board can be found in the notes which I have provided in the description box. So please refer to these notes after this session ends. Now, let us understand what are the conditions required for tea production in the country. First of all, you have to understand that tree or growing of tea, it requires moderate conditions or moderate temperatures. Hence, the temperature requirement for adequately growing tree or tea is that of 15 to 25 degrees centigrade. Sorry, it requires 13 to 30 degrees centigrade. Further, it requires a well distributed rainfall, which means that rainfall should be distributed throughout the year, and the amount of rainfall which is required is that of 150 to 250 centimeters per annum. Further, the growing of tea crop, it requires high amount of humidity, because increased soil moisture, it is very much beneficial for soil growth and growth of the tea plant. Also, as you can understand from important tea growing areas, that altitude or these tea crops, they grow in areas of high altitude. Because areas of high altitude, they provide slopes which prevents accumulation of water inside these tree plants, and it also provides them with lower temperatures and increased cloud cover, which again is beneficial for growing of tea crop. Further, the nature of soil which is required for growing of this tea crop is that it requires acidic, well drained soil which is rich in humus matters. Hence, these are the important conditions which is required for growing of tea crop. Now, let us understand or let us solve the model question. Now, with reference to tea plant, consider the following statements. The first statement, tea grows well in extreme temperatures, which is an incorrect statement. As I've already highlighted, tea grows well in moderate temperatures. Now, the rainfall required for tea plantation ranges from 150 to 250 centimeters, which is a correct statement. The third statement, tea plants, they prefer well-drained, basic soils which are rich in organic matter, which again is an incorrect statement, because although they require well-drained and rich organic matter soils, however, the nature of the soil should be acidic. Hence, this third statement is an incorrect statement. So naturally, the correct answer to this model question is option A, because only one statement, that is statement 2, was correct. Now with this, let me end today's session of DNS. But before ending today's session, let me announce that Raus IAS is beginning its QIP classes from Monday. Now this means that the QIP classes will be taken from 11th of March and will start off with polity and economy classes, which will be taken by Vaibhav sir and Baswa sir respectively. And also, before ending, let me request you to like, share and subscribe this video, because it helps us to keep motivated. Hence, with this, I bid you a very good night.